All right, guys. So Charlamagne the God over at the Breakfast Club recently came up with what is probably my favorite political nickname that I've heard over the last couple of years. This one is specifically targeted at the Democratic Minority House Speaker, Hakeem Jeffries. So let's go ahead and watch this short little clip here, and we'll come out the other side.
I love having the speaker, minority speaker, Hakeem Jeffries. Because, I'm a political nerd. Like, I love talking politics.
Charlamagne hates him.
You do?
I don't hate him. I just don't think he stands for anything.
Well,
I think that I call him AIPAC Shakur. Like,
well, he definitely, we did talk about messaging. And I actually went to the Capitol and had a meeting with him. And we talked about messaging and how I was like, the frustration with the party is y'all have to get more gangster. Like, stop going by the politics of the late 2000s, in 2010. And you have to, like, rise to the occasion in the messaging. And he did. I saw him do more afterwards.
Hakeem is a puppet. Hakeem's not doing anything if Chuck Schumer don't tell him to do it. And it's simple as that.
So on that last point there, Hakeem Jeffries is definitely a puppet. I don't know that he's a puppet for Chuck Schumer. He's more so a puppet for corporations, for the billionaire class, and for AIPAC, which is part of the reason why this kind of a nickname, I think, fits him so well. So just following up on a couple reasons why I think AIPAC Shakur is perfect for a guy like Hakeem Jeffries. So number one, this guy stands for nothing, right? As Charlamagne was pointing out there, this is a guy who has no real principles, no real policy beliefs, no coherent messaging strategy or vision. And on top of that, he has the charisma of a wet pile of dog shit. I mean, just as an example in terms of what his sort of strategy of resistance to the Trump administration was, this is an example from just a couple of weeks ago as Trump is sending National Guard troops onto the streets of the United States, predominantly in liberal cities across the country. His resistance was saying that he really enjoyed a strongly worded letter that was written by the DC Attorney General. This is his strategy for resisting the fascist takeover of this country, is strongly worded letters. So this is sort of the level of usefulness that we are getting out of the Democratic leadership at this point. Again, AIPAC Shakur hits as well because this is a guy who is fully in the pocket of lobbying organizations like AIPAC. I mean, here from AIPAC Tracker, $1.742 million received from the pro-Israel lobby. $1.7 million. This guy is paid to have a certain specific vision or a certain specific policy in regards to a foreign country. That's who this guy is. He is bought and paid for, not just by the Israel lobby, but this is a pretty clear and obvious example of sort of the corrupt nature of a guy like Hakeem Jeffries. And this is the exact reason, the main reason, why still to this day he is refusing to endorse Zohran Mamdani in New York City, who overwhelmingly won in the Democratic primary for the mayor's position. There's basically one reason why Hakeem refuses to endorse him. It's not because of his grocery store ideas. It's not because of his free childcare ideas. It's not because of his housing policy or anything like that. It's because Zohran Mamdani is a principled critic of Israel. It's because Zohran Mamdani said, yes, I would follow in accordance with international law and the ICC arrest warrants and arrest Benjamin Netanyahu if he stepped foot in New York City. It's because Hakeem Jeffries is paid to despise and to block and to stand in the way of people like Zohran Mamdani by lobbying organizations like AIPAC. That's why he's still refusing to endorse Zohran Mamdani. Now, this will also hit hard, I think, for Hakeem, because this is a guy who I think is a self-styled sort of like rap aficionado. Right? So he loves old school hip hop and rap. This is just one example of him doing this interview where I guess the journalist teed him up on some rap related question. And he just does the most cringeful performance of Wu-Tang that you could possibly imagine. Let's go ahead and try to subject ourselves to like 10 seconds of this.
The Wu-Tang Clan, which has always stuck with me. We've got stick up kids, corrupt cops, and crack rocks, and stray shots, all on the block that stays hot. But leave it up to me, and I'll be living truth to kick the truth to the young black youth. Shorty's wondering why I'm smoking cess, drinking beer, and ain't trying to hear what I'm kicking in his ear. Neglected for now, but yo.
Okay, so that's enough of that. So again, you can see why this may hit home for somebody like Hakeem Jeffries. Perfect nickname, AIPAC Shakur. Here's another clip where he was filibustering and he said, I got so many stories. I feel like I'm in a hip hop studio right now. I don't even really know what he means by this, because people tell stories in rap songs. I guess that's like what he's trying to say here. I don't know. But anyways, it's a perfect nickname for a guy like Hakeem Jeffries, because again, he stands for nothing. He's totally bought and paid for. He is corrupted on the position of Israel, as clearly seen by the upwards of almost $2 million that he's gotten from AIPAC. And again, on a personal level, I think this will hit hard for him. So credit to Charlamagne. Fantastic nickname there. Now, we also have more updates that I want to get into this video. It's not just about political nicknames. So here's the latest from the Democratic Party more broadly in terms of their stance on the current genocide that our government, both political parties, have been fully complicit in. So from The Intercept, their headline is DNC votes down overwhelmingly popular position calling for an arms ban to Israel. And you can see up here Ken Martin, the current chair of the DNC. So here's what they're talking about. They say in the latest party turmoil over Israel's war on Gaza, Democratic National Committee members voted on Tuesday to kill a resolution calling on the U.S. to halt arms sales to Israel. The resolution had been met with resistance from DNC chair Ken Martin, this guy up here, despite polls showing overwhelming opposition to Israel's military actions in Gaza from Democratic voters. And again, you could make the case that Kamala Harris could have potentially won the 2024 election if she was willing to break from Biden on the issue of the genocide in Gaza. She refused to do that. She said there would be no policy difference between her and Biden in relation to Israel. So that's how we kind of ended up in the position that we're in right now for Democrats, but they're sticking to their guns, doubling down on it. They say the weapons ban resolution was put forward by a first-time DNC member to represent the views of younger party members. And it's actually not just the views of younger party members. I'll show you the latest polling data on how overwhelming resistance to U.S. support for Israel is right now within the Democratic Party broadly. But first here, real quick, we did have some celebration from the CEO of the Democratic Majority for Israel, another sort of lobbying organization that pushes support for Israel in the Democratic Party. So here's the statement from the CEO, Brian Romick. He says, today, the Democratic Party sent a clear and resounding message by defeating a reckless and divisive resolution. Again, we'll look at the polling data here, but it doesn't seem very divisive to block weapons sales to Israel. In fact, it seems like that's the kind of thing that could unify the party, and that what they're doing in this case by approving continued weapons sales to Israel is the divisive resolution. But he says, we stand with the people of Israel and will continue to do so. For more than 75 years, the U.S.-Israel relationship has been strong because it's grounded in shared values and mutual security interests. Listen, I think at this point, if you look at what Israel has been doing in Gaza, if you look at what Israel stands for, their shared values supposedly over the last number of years and decades in their treatment of Palestinians, I think that any country that shares those kinds of values probably needs to be demolished and built from the ground up. Like, what values are we talking about here? Apartheid, ethnic cleansing, genocide, dehumanization of a different ethnic group? What shared values are we talking about? Because it's certainly not freedom and democracy and human rights, if that's what you're implying, because Israel does not share those values, right? And then even on mutual security interests, I mean, this is the same country that just a couple of months ago and probably a couple months into the future is trying to drag us into a major Middle Eastern war with Iran that would be incredibly destabilizing and contrary to any sort of metric of America's national security interests or interests in the region. So I don't think by either of these metrics, whether it's shared values or mutual security interests, that Israel stands to benefit the American people. But he continues, he says, we cannot forget how we got here. Hamas started this war and continues to hold 50 hostages. Passing this resolution would have been a gift to Republicans, further divided our party, and rewarded Hamas's brutality. So there is so much packed within this that's just insane to me for somebody to say at this point. I mean, we cannot forget how we got here. Hamas started this war. First off, this did not start on October 7th. In fact, Hamas wouldn't even exist as a militant resistance organization if there wasn't a years-long, a decades-long occupation of Palestinians illegally under international law, by the way. That's what Hamas is. Like, they are a violent resistance organization to Israeli occupation. Okay, so let's not pretend like history began on October 7th and they just attacked out of nowhere and nobody could have possibly seen this coming, right? That's number one. Number two, they continue to hold 50 hostages. Well, part A response to that is Hamas has been repeatedly trying to cut a deal with Israel to return the hostages back to Israel. And it's been Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu and the United States in partnership with them that have repeatedly sabotaged those potential deals. And then part B of response to this claim, are we pretending that Israel doesn't hold thousands of Palestinians hostage? Do they not count as hostages being held in administrative detention without any sort of charge, any sort of due process, again, by the thousands and thousands inside of Israel, many of them being tortured inside of Israeli concentration camps? Like, are we pretending that that's not the case? And then continuing, again, passing this resolution would have been a gift to Republicans, further divided our party, and rewarded Hamas's brutality. So blocking weapons to Israel is a reward to Hamas, but continuing to send weapons to Israel that they're using to blow up, a kindergarten's classroom worth of children every day, that's not a reward to Israel's brutality. I mean, again, this is the kind of statement that you get from DMFI. I mean, I don't know what else you would expect. This is kind of the reason for their existence, is to continue Democratic Party support for genocidal policies, for apartheid policies, for the ethnic cleansing in the West Bank. So there you have it. They're celebrating this. They are happy about this vote, and they feel like they've secured a victory. But even as that may be the case, in the upper echelons of the Democratic establishment, the base of the party, the overwhelming majority of the Democratic voter base, is not in line with that DMFI messaging. So here's a new Quinnipiac poll saying 50% of voters across the board say that Israel is committing a genocide in Gaza. This includes 77% of Democrats, 51% of independents, and 20% of Republicans. 60% of voters oppose sending more aid to Israel. Again, that's across the board. It's 75% with Democrats, 66% a supermajority with independents, and even almost 40% of Republicans say we shouldn't be sending more aid to Israel. And the DNC is saying, oh, it would be divisive. It would be divisive if we cut off weapons. No, it seems pretty overwhelming when 66% of independents want you to do that, when 75% of your own party wants you to do that. I mean, again, when 77% of your party says Israel is committing a genocide, and your response to that is to say, we should keep sending them weapons. I mean, the utter and complete disconnect between the Democratic Party establishment and the voter base could not be wider on this kind of an issue. 77%. And, we have more polling data here as well. In the same vein, we're now at the point where U.S. voters sympathize with Palestinians more than Israelis regarding the, quote, situation, majority of Democrats, and even a plurality of independents. So 40% of voters say the U.S. is too supportive of Israel, and this includes 63% of Democrats, 42% of independents, and 15% of Republicans. So again, the polling data on this could not be clearer in terms of where Democrats stand on this issue. And you still have the sort of establishment, the elite figures within the party who are like gripping onto this issue and will not budge even a single inch. In fact, as a part of this vote that was taking place, some people were trying to get the language changed so that it wasn't just, cutting off arms to Israel entirely, but they tried to change the language to be like, let's cut off offensive weapons, even though that's kind of a silly distinction to make. But even then, they blocked that language change because they didn't even want the possibility of people voting to cut off offensive weapons to Israel. In other words, weapons that are explicitly being used against Palestinians in Gaza. So again, this is the current state of the Democratic Party. Could not be more pathetic, could not be more out of touch with their own voters. Now, we also have at the same time new polling data out of Israel in terms of how Israeli Jews, the Jewish population in Israel, feel about what's going on now. And honestly, it feels like every time I see a new poll out of Israel, it's like breaking. 93% of Israelis think Palestinian children should be thrown into the sun. And this is sort of in that same vein. I've shown you many polls like this before, but according to this new survey, 76%, over 3/4 of Jewish Israelis believe, quote, there are no innocent people in Gaza. There are no innocent people in Gaza. What is the natural implication of that? Well, the implication of that is that 76% of Jewish Israelis think you can just kill them all. Right? Because if they're not innocent, then you would be justified in killing them, right? 76%. Like, what do you even do about this kind of a society? This is a fundamentally rotten and broken society where 76%, an overwhelming majority, say there's no such thing as innocent civilians. This lines up with other polls that we've seen recently coming out of Israel, where they say there was a recent poll I covered a couple weeks ago where an overwhelming majority of Israelis said that the IDF should not even take into account the suffering of civilians in Gaza as a part of their offensive. I mean, again, what do you even do about this kind of thing? You have another part of this poll here. 65% of Jewish Israelis think that as long as the IDF controls Gaza, it isn't Israel's responsibility to provide humanitarian aid to the residents. I mean, number one, under international law, this is just straight up wrong. Any sort of occupying power absolutely has an obligation to facilitate humanitarian aid to the people that they are occupying and bombing. That's just a fact. But beyond that, again, from a moral level, like you're saying that the Israeli people overwhelmingly support the IDF completely militarily occupying and conquering Gaza, and that they do not have an obligation to provide humanitarian aid, which, by the way, is not even what people are asking for. We're not even asking for Israel to provide humanitarian aid. We're asking them to stop blocking other organizations and other countries from bringing aid into Gaza. That's what people are asking for. And apparently, even that is too much. So again, another absolutely insane poll to give us a little bit of an insight into the absolute fascist sort of mania that the state of Israel is in. Now, as a counterexample to what I think the future of the Democratic Party should be heading towards, right? Contrary to Chuck Schumer, contrary to Hakeem Jeffries and the rest of the establishment, this is a really interesting candidate here. And I genuinely hope this guy ends up being closer to a Bernie Sanders, maybe even a better than Bernie Sanders when it comes to Israel, but and not like some sort of a John Fetterman kind of flip-flopper who pretends to be progressive and then turns out to be an absolute psychopath. But from what I've seen so far, this guy seems absolutely solid on every level. So this is Graham Plattner in Maine, and he's running to unseat Susan Collins, who, as AIPAC Tracker points out here, has taken almost $900,000 from the Israel lobby. And AIPAC Tracker, which I very rarely see them do, is giving an endorsement of Graham Plattner. So they say, Graham Plattner is courageously calling out the genocide in Gaza. He has taken a principled stand by rejecting support from AIPAC and the rest of the pro-genocide Israel lobby. This is the moral clarity and integrity that we desperately need in the Senate. Mainers deserve a senator who will fight for their health care, their economic security, and their futures, not the interests of a foreign government. And he pretty much across the board has a very solid policy platform. He supports Medicare for all. I believe he supports the Green New Deal as well, if I'm not mistaken, and he supports cutting off weapons to Israel. He rejects any lobbying money from groups like AIPAC and the rest of the pro-Israel lobby. And on top of that, he has a great message. I mean, I watched some of his campaign ads, and he has no issue, like many of the Democratic establishment types, calling out the oligarchy, calling out the billionaire class directly, and even calling out the upper echelon of the Democratic establishment himself. He's being dubbed, according here to the Jerusalem Post, as the main Mamdani, and said on Thursday that there is a genocide happening in Palestine. And he was asked again about the leadership within his own party, and he was asked by Manu Raju here over on CNN if he would vote for Chuck Schumer to remain the Democratic leader, and he said no. Simply no. And this interview was actually amazing because every time he was asked a difficult question that typically you'd see politicians sort of squirm and try to wiggle their way out of having to actually give a substantive answer, he was just giving straight up yes or no. And then he would just expand on it a little bit. And so his expansion on not voting for Chuck Schumer was, we need leaders that have vision and, frankly, the ability to fight. The things that I've seen recently don't show me a Democratic leadership that has that. And he's absolutely right. So go look into this guy, Graham Plattner, especially if any of my viewers happen to live in Maine. I think it's absolutely worthy of getting behind this guy, and hopefully he can, run a successful campaign against Susan Collins. He would be infinitely superior in that position. He might actually be, if he gets elected, like the most left-wing member of the Senate that we could have. I mean, on many different issues, not just obviously when it comes to Israel and Gaza. I think he would probably be the best senator that we would have when it comes to specifically Israel and Palestine. So, again, go show him some support if you can. Now, final two things here before I finish off the video. We have here from Jasper Nathaniel as a reminder in terms of where we currently stand in the Gaza genocide right now. He says, it feels like it should be a bigger story that Hamas accepted a ceasefire proposal over a week ago and Israel just fully ignored it. And he's right. So basically, as a reminder, as I covered in my previous video 2 days ago, I believe, Hamas basically took a deal that was fully written by Steve Witkoff, representing the United States, and Ron Dermer, representing Israel. It was basically almost word for word the Israel-U.S. proposal, right? And they accepted that almost just sort of to say, like, look, If we give in on 99% of what you are demanding, will you then accept the ceasefire if we accept it? And the answer to that is, as Jasper is pointing out there, no. And now we even have Steve Witkoff, according to Dropsite, an update here. He was asked on Fox News whether or not they would push forward with the deal that Hamas just agreed to. It's literally called the Witkoff proposal. And he now says that President Trump's official position matches Israel's, that only a deal releasing all Israeli captives at once will be acceptable. They say Witkoff also told Fox News that Trump will chair an expanded White House meeting on Gaza on Wednesday, focused on a very comprehensive day after plan. He added, people will see how robust it is and how well-meaning it is. It reflects President Trump's heartfelt motives there. Heartfelt motives. This is the same guy who was posting on his Truth Social account AI created videos of like a Trump hotel on the beaches of Gaza. This is a heartfelt and genuine guy here. They say Hamas officials have repeatedly accused Israel and the United States of deliberately stalling ceasefire negotiations with various tactics, using them as cover to continue their genocidal war on Palestine. And even after saying that, yeah, we don't agree to the deal that Hamas just agreed to, which was the deal that we ourselves created and wrote. Even after that, he's asked, who's holding up the war more? Is it Israel or is it Hamas? And he says Hamas. And he says 100%. You just said like 2 seconds ago that you're not in favor of your own deal after Hamas accepted it, right? But it's still Hamas somehow that is in the way of potential peace here. So there's your update for today, guys. I mean, it's just, there is no end. Right? I mean, there is no possible ceasefire deal that Israel and the United States would get behind because that's not their plan, right? The plan is to continue to try to force the population southward as Israel expands their operations into Gaza City, to force the hundreds of thousands of people who remain up to the north down to the south into giant concentration camps, and then eventually to expel them entirely out of Gaza in a mass ethnic cleansing campaign. That's their strategy, right? And there's no indication, at least unless there's this magic meeting that's happening today and something happens and comes out from that, there is no indication that there's any plan outside of that, right? And it's clear when you see this kind of brazen lying here from guys like Steve Witkoff on who's holding up peace and what the blockades are, and constantly changing the parameters of what a potential end to this could look like. So I know that was a lot, kind of blending a couple different topics, all kind of related to each other, but separate things, all into one video. So I'll leave you guys off with that. Appreciate all of the support you guys have been giving to the channel. Remember to like, comment, subscribe if you want to help to break through the YouTube censorship and the YouTube algorithm. And yeah, I will see you guys tomorrow.
Politic guy has the best politic. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me, everyone is saying